The long-awaited Israeli plane, Israeli Air Force One, is set to begin its official flight in November 2023. Besides the fact that it's a presidential plane filled with incredible features, this plane has got people talking due to several controversies surrounding its launch. From corruption claims to breaking aviation rules, the controversies seem endless, but it still manages to get approved for flight. So, what's the exact deal about this plane? And are the claims real? Let's start from the very beginning. During Israel's early years, it was quite rare for the head of state to make official trips abroad. Since they were just setting up the country and didn't have much reason to make official trips. But over the years, they had more reasons to take such trips, and they did so with either an Israel Air Force transport or a scheduled El Al flight. They did so for several years without being concerned, but soon enough, it dawned on the government that they had to get a private plane for the Prime Minister. Besides the mounting cost of chartering a plane, the lack of encrypted communication systems in civilian planes was also a source of concern. So, in 2014, the decision to purchase a plane that would serve Israel's heads of state was approved. The aircraft acquired was named Wing of Zion by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Before going into details about the features of this aircraft, let's go back in time and discuss some of the aircraft that have served past heads of state. From 1948 through to 1956, the inaugural Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, used military turboprop transports, such as the Douglas DC-3 and C-47, belonging to the Israel Defense Forces, to travel within the country, especially during the 1948 and 1956 Arab-Israeli conflicts, to visit the military fronts. At the time, a turboprop, which is a turbine engine that drives an aircraft propeller, was the commonly used means of transport used by a country's air force. So, the then Prime Minister of Israel felt it was a befitting means of transportation. Then, in the 1960s, the Israeli Air Force began using the Boeing 377 Stratocruiser cargo transports, an aircraft suitable for flying over a long distance. They had purchased the planes popularly known as the Princess of the Atlantic from a commercial airline called Pan American. Due to its conduciveness and long-range flight capabilities, one of the planes became adapted as a VIP aircraft for ministerial visits abroad. It was in this aircraft that the 1966 Prime Minister Levi Eshkol made trips to several African countries like Kenya, Ivory Coast, and Madagascar to discuss prospective trade deals. But from the 1970s till the early 2000s, the Israeli Air Force, IAF, switched up their VIP transport duties and began using the Boeing 707 jet-powered airliners for ministerial flights. However, the planes had initially been acquired by the IAF to aid air-to-air refueling. But when they saw its potential, they made it readily available to transport prominent government officials when the need be. But the plane was not without its flaws. Because the aircraft had been acquired second-hand, their age was a great disadvantage, as it made it difficult for them to operate transatlantic routes without the need for refueling. The most famous of these Boeing 707 aircraft was the number 118, also called the Rayum Oryx. It was originally an Air France plane before the IAF acquired it. It was the aircraft that flew Menachem Begin on his historic 1979 visit to Egypt, which laid the foundations for the peace treaty signed between Israel and Egypt. As time passed, prominent officials of the Israeli government, including the president and the prime minister, began flying abroad using leased commercial airliners. The Ministry of Defense would lease from airlines like El Al, Israel's flag carrier, and do their best to keep it secured. However, many senior government officials were not too pleased with this commercial VIP transportation. They criticized any opportunity they got, and their major concern was the lack of security. They argued that a plane meant for commercial purposes wouldn't be fitted with the equipment the top officials needs, especially in situations where they need to relay sensitive information. Other problems highlighted were that of unforeseen setbacks. For instance, in 2019, Prime Minister Netanyahu had to postpone a return flight from Poland because the Boeing 777 he was to board got accidentally damaged by a ground vehicle before it could take off. A similar incident occurred to Netanyahu quite recently. The 777, which was to transport him to Italy, got delayed for several hours due to El Al officials refusing to operate the plane in protest against his policies. It was for reasons like these, in 2014, a board made up of prominent Israeli officials authorized the acquisition of an aircraft that would serve as an official means of transportation. The aircraft was immediately acquired, and work began immediately to upgrade into a top-tier aircraft that would be suitable for use by the Prime Minister and his entourage. So why is it that the aircraft is set to take its first official flight almost 10 years later? Was the project abandoned and later resumed? Or did the aircraft take so long to fix up? Well, the government awarded the contract to Israel Aerospace Industries, and they purchased a used Boeing 767-300ER, which was retired by its owner, the Australian airline Qantas. After purchase, the aircraft was locked up in a storage facility in California for 3 years before being transported to Israel for the upgrade to begin. Initially, the budget for its purchase, conversion, and upgrade was 493 million shekels, $115 million. But as work began, the expenses increased, and by the time it took its first flight, it had grown by over 50% to 580 million shekels, $150 million. So let's look through the new features of the aircraft. Although the picture of the interior has not been released because the upgrades made to the new plane are classified, little information about it has been shared, and some changes can also easily be spotted. The first change spotted is converting the plane's color to blue and white as a representation of the Israeli flag. Still on the exterior, there is now a bump on the plane's back. This is believed to be a radar dome to house an advanced communication antenna which would allow the Prime Minister and his team to use encrypted communication channels. Then there's the Sky Shield missile defense system. Elbit developed this feature as a detector for shoulder-launched missiles fired from below. The Sky Shield would use infrared sensors to detect, and the system would immediately generate a laser beam that would divert it from the aircraft. This feature is a necessity as it would serve as a major source of protection. Then let's move on to the interior. The Boeing 767-300ER, which usually can carry up to 290 passengers, will now only carry 120 passengers due to the new fixtures that have been added. An example is the boardroom that can be converted into an operating theater once a button is pushed. That's similar to the feature present in the official aircraft the President of the United States used. It also has 120 seats, mostly arranged like the economy class section on a regular civilian airline. These seats cannot also recline. The only difference is that it has no entertainment system. This is a means to prevent any form of data leaks. This section is for the entourage flying with the President or Prime Minister. The third section of the plane is designed for the Prime Minister or President. This section includes a bedroom, a small shower, a makeup mirror, and seats for a few security personnel and secretaries. There is also a kitchen and office/meeting room with provisions for video conferencing. So that's all the features currently known about the aircraft. Other details include the fact that the plane will be stored and maintained at the Israel Air Force's Nevatim base in the Negev. It will be under the command of the operators of the Boeing 707 aerial refueling tanks, Squadron 120, usually with a full load. The Boeing 767-300ER can fly up to 11,000 kilometers. But since the Prime Minister's plane will have fewer passengers and less cargo, there's a high chance it will reach further distances. So, what exactly caused the delay in its use? The simple answer is the controversy surrounding the money used in retrofitting the aircraft. As mentioned earlier, the initial budget was 493 million shekels, which the public considered outrageous but decided to overlook. However, during the course of the upgrade, they had to spend several more millions, especially due to Prime Minister Netanyahu asking them to make various changes. According to the report released by the State Comptroller in 2022, Everything boiled down to the entire project suffering from mismanagement. The report stated that the National Security Council, NSC, that managed the project hid information from the Knesset cabinet regarding the actual cost of the project while submitting the proposal for government approval. What made things worse was the fact that the NSC didn't also include VAT in the cost they decided to present to the cabinet. Then the Israel Security Agency, popularly known as Shin Bet, also made alterations to the security details of the plane, which increased the overall cost. And finally, Netanyahu came up with specific design choices for his section of the plane. This included a shower, which cost 4.3 million shekels, an entertainment system, which cost 2 million shekels, and a system of electrical outlets that cost 2 million shekels. In total, what he asked for cost approximately 60 million shekels. All these were what caused the cost of retrofitting to be outrageously high. Nonetheless, the project was completed in 2019 when it took its first test flight. Although everyone knew it wouldn't take its official flight immediately because it still had to go through several tests and receive a flight certificate, it was estimated that in about 2 years it would begin use. But they guessed wrong. In December 2021, the aircraft got its flight certificate, showing it was fit for use by the country's leaders. But at the time, the Prime Minister in power, Naftali Bennett, didn't move to bring the plane into operation. He said it represented everything terrible and corrupt in the Netanyahu government. He also mentioned that it was unfair to the citizens that their taxes were used for something he considered frivolous. When he didn't decide on the aircraft, the Ministry of Defense announced the placing of the aircraft in a storage facility at the Nevatim Air Force Base in southern Israel till further notice. Then he was succeeded by Yair Lapid, who also believed that it was a waste of taxpayers' funds and a symbol of corruption. He preferred to use civilian aircraft rather than fly with the plane. In fact, he ordered the removal of the defense systems in preparation for sale, but before it could be sold, Benjamin Netanyahu resumed power. Before Bennett and Yair succeeded Netanyahu, the Prime Minister had continuously tried to convince the public that the money spent on the aircraft was totally worth it. However, due to his reputation as a corrupt official, it was hard to believe his claims. Then Bennett and Yair further cemented the masses' beliefs when they decided not to make use of the plane because it was a representation of all the terrible things Netanyahu was known for. For context, let's discuss some of the corruption allegations that have been filed against the Israeli Prime Minister. Despite winning several elections and being the longest-serving president, due to him ruling for 16 years and counting, he isn't really a people's favorite due to his corrupt practices. He has been facing different allegations since his first term as president in 1996, but we'll discuss only the more recent ones. In 2019, Israel's Attorney General indicted Benjamin Netanyahu for fraud, breach of trust, and bribery. It was the first time an incumbent president was charged with a crime. In the 63-page long indictment, Netanyahu was accused of receiving several luxury gifts and hundreds of thousands of pounds from billionaire friends in exchange for using his power in their favor. He was also accused of paying Israeli media for positive news coverage. These accusations severely affected his political pursuits and played a major role in his being eventually overthrown by the Bennett-led government. Luckily, he was able to return power after the government set up Bennett and Yair collapsed. Many assumed he had learned from his 2019 mistakes and would steer clear of any controversial issue, but in reality, his past keeps haunting him. Just recently, Israel's opposition leader, Yair Lapid, testified against the Prime Minister in his corruption trial. He said Netanyahu had tried twice to persuade him to back legislation that would have given a Hollywood mogul millions in tax breaks. Yair mentioned that he didn't want to be a party to Netanyahu's corrupt practices, which was why he refused to back the legislature. We could go on about the corrupt practices of Netanyahu, but we'll stop here now that you've gotten the picture. So, the aircraft was not allowed to fly by Netanyahu's opposition, who had briefly taken over power. But now that Netanyahu is back, the Boeing 767-300ER will be taken to the United Nations Climate Conference that will be held in Dubai in November 2023. The aircraft is quite important to the Prime Minister because immediately after he returned to power, he ordered its removal from the storage facility and ordered its preparation for upcoming flights. In January 2023, successful test flights were completed by the country's Air Force and IAI. The tests were conducted at the Air Force Base in Neverton. Every feature performed as it should, and training of the crew members began immediately. In September 2023, the flight crew that will staff the Wing of Zion jet visited Cyprus with the Prime Minister to learn the delegation process for future flights. So, it seems the Wing of Zion would finally take flight soon. Although many are not pleased with the development, some believe it's better if it's in use than being locked in a storage facility. The chairman of the Israel Aerospace Industries, Yair Katz, said that the plane is an excellent aircraft and should be regarded as an investment. He continued by saying that the fact that it was locked was a real waste. In other news, the Israeli government recently announced a project that everyone agrees to its benefits. In late August 2023, the country's Ministry of Defense announced that test flights have begun for the new surveillance aircraft known as Oron, which it claims is the world's most advanced aircraft of its kind. The aircraft was developed by a unique collaboration of the Ministry of Defense's research and development arm, the Israeli Aerospace Industries ELTA subsidiary, the Israel Air Force, Intelligence Corps, and the Navy. It features top-tier sensors and C-41 systems that are believed would provide unparalleled intelligence abilities over a large area. It would enable real-time monitoring of ground movements under extreme weather conditions. Once it successfully completes its test flights and gets certified, the aircraft would serve with the 122nd Squadron, which is also known as Nachshon. The squadron was established in 1971 to serve as a surveillance team. They conduct missions of air control in deep enemy territories. They also have a signal intelligence unit. Some of the special aircraft that they have used of late are the modified Gulfstream G500 Shavit and G550 Itam. It's believed that the main purpose of its creation would be to gain intelligence and identity targets for attacks in Iran, Iraq, Yemen, and other areas in the Middle East. These countries have missile and drone capabilities that could be used against Israel. Besides that, Israel also recently revealed its plans to buy a third fleet of F-35 stealth fighter jets in a deal worth $3 billion. And it's believed that it will be financed through US military aid. These fighter jets are believed to be the most advanced in the world. They can gather intelligence, firing deep into the enemy's territory and participating in air duels. Israel was the first to use the F-35 in combat. So, for projects like these, the public won't be concerned by the cost because of the purpose it would serve. Unlike the Prime Minister's jet, which would only serve the government officials. Nonetheless, despite the controversy surrounding the Wing of Zion, it is important to mention that the official jet is also not particularly a waste of money. Although a lot was spent on the retrofitting of the aircraft, based on the features it now has, it's worth it in the long run. In the long run, there would be a lot saved as the Prime Minister wouldn't have to lease civilian airlines for foreign travel. Also, they wouldn't have to worry about security because every single member of the flight crew would be provided for by the country's Air Force, and the Ministry of Defense would also send in delegates to protect the Prime Minister. The missile deflecting features and the communication system are also a plus that would make the flight itch-free. So, in summary, the aircraft is worth the expense. What do you think? Should Netanyahu have sold the aircraft just like the opposition leader, Yair, wanted? Or do you think the aircraft is worth it? Kindly share your thoughts in the comments section. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next video.